Where it says key concept, okay? Because this is mostly about square roots, and how to write that as an exponent. This is on page 13, okay? Page 13. So for any non-negative real number, b to the 1/2 power, this is page 13, okay? Eyes up here or looking at it in your notes. B to the 1/2 power is equal to the square root of b, okay? B to the 1/2 power is equal to the square root of b, all right? I would put a box around that whole thing on page 13. B to the 1/2 power is equal to the square root of b. So notice the base of your exponent, I'm sorry? Page 13. Oh, is it 12 on yours? Oh, sorry. Page 12. 13 on mine. So b is your base. So in the example, we have 64 is the base and 1/2 is your exponent. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Your base, whatever your base is, put that away. Your base becomes what goes inside the radical. Okay? The 1/2, even though it's not written, the 1/2, that 1 goes right here. That's like put a 1 on it. Okay? So that's putting the exponent to the base. Now the 2 on the bottom actually goes in the crook of this little radical sign. But when you are taking the square root, Dwayne, Kayla, eyes up here, please. When you're taking that square root, you do not need to put the 2 in there, because that basically is just saying what two numbers multiplied together give you 64. And that number is 8. Okay? So if I said, let's take a look at some other examples. If I said 25 to the 1/2 power, okay, that means you are going to write it as a square root. The base 25 goes under the radical sign. If we wanted to, the 1 could go here because that is to the first power, and the 2 goes there, saying what two numbers multiplied together give you 25? And that answer would be 5. But this is how you write it back and forth. Okay, so this is in exponential form, and this is what we call radical form, underneath the radical sign. Okay? So look down here. It says, for example, this 5 means the 5th root of 18. So what number multiplied 5 times? One number times the same number times the same number times the same number times the same number gives you 18. That's what the 5th root means. 2, 4, 8. Yeah, it's not even 2. It's not even 1. Okay, but that's what it means. So the 5th root of 18 is what number multiplied 5 times give you 18. Okay, so down at the bottom, because 3 to the 4th power is 81, 3 is the 4th root. So you could say 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, that gives you 81. Or the 4th root of 81 is 3. Okay, Let's go to example 1A. So is this in radical form or exponential form first? 10 to the 1/2 power. Is that radical form or exponential? Aiden. Radical or exponential? Yeah, because there's an exponent there. So this is exponential form. We need to change it to radical form. So you have to have a radical sign for radical form. Can you see? All right, your base 10 is going to go inside, and if it's to the 1/2 power, that's all you need to do. Because we could put a 1 here, and we could put the 2 there, but you don't need to. You can just also write it as the square root of 10. Okay? Let's do another one, just similar to that. So what if I had 29 to the 1/2 power? That's in exponential form, and I'm telling you, let's put it in radical form. That is going to be, take your base, 29, put it under the radical sign. You don't have to put the 1 there, or you could, because that's not going to change anything, right? And if I take the square root, that says what two numbers, what same number multiplied by itself gives you 29. I don't need that really either. So the answer is square root of 29. So anything to the 1/2 power is equal to the square root of that anything. Does that make sense? No? If I have 4324 to the 1/2 power, this whole number to the 1/2 power, that is the square root of 4,324. Period. That's it. Okay? You just rewrite the base under the radical sign. Okay, let's go to this one over here. So letter B says, I want the square root of 7k squared. Okay, 7k squared. So here is what's under the radical. First of all, write that as it is, 7k squared. Now, it's under the radical sign, so that means all of this is to the power of 1/2, because you just have the radical sign there. So then, to simplify that, we know we would have to multiply this by every exponent on the inside of that parentheses, right? So the 7 has no exponent, put a 1 on it. And this would become 7 to the 1 times 1/2, and k to the 2 times 1/2. 7 to the 1 times 1/2 is 1/2 power. And what is half of 2 for k? Just 1. So this is your final answer for that problem. Does that make sense? I saw one head shake yes. Everybody else looks a little stunned. If it is under the radical sign, you put what is under the radical sign, rewrite it, and then if it's nothing else written, it's just to the 1/2 power, and then you multiply that 1/2 times the exponents of all the rest. Okay? All right, let's take a look at the next page. So, write each expression in radical or exponential form. Is this at the top of your next page? So, square root. A square root is always to the 1/2 power. So, rewrite this 16p, put it in parentheses, and raise it to the 1/2 power. Okay? Now, that 16, there's no exponent on it, so put a 1 on it. Same with the p, put a 1 on it. So that becomes 16 to the 1 times 1/2, and p to the 1 times 1/2. Okay, what is 16 to the 1/2 power? What number times itself gives you 16? 16 to the 1/2 power. No, 8 times 8 is not 16. What number times itself gives you 16? 4. So 16 to the 1/2 power is 4, and p to the 1/2 would just stay as p to the 1/2. So you changed it from radical form to exponential. And it's 4p to the 1/2. Let's take a look at letter B. Is that in exponential form or radical form? Letter B. Kadeja, is that in exponential form or radical form? Yeah, there's an exponent there. So that's exponential. We need to change it to a radical. Okay? How do I do that? You keep the base, Imani. Keep the base, 34, and it just becomes the square root of 34. Again, you could put the 1 here because that's your numerator. You could put the 2 there, but a square root is always something to the first power and the square root. Okay? So this is your final answer. Questions on A or B? All right, let's take a look at C. What form is this? Is this radical form or exponential form? Yeah, because there's a radical sign, right? So this is radical form. We want to change it to exponential form. Well, the only thing that has a radical is the p. So the 8 we can keep out in front, just like a regular 8. And when you take the square root, a square root going back the other way, you keep the p. And what is that exponent for p then? To the 1/2, right? So your final answer is 8 times p to the 1/2 power. I'm not getting a lot of confidence. Does this make sense? Or am I trying too hard? Does it make sense?
So why did this come up? Like, why did you take it out?
Because we're changing from radical form to exponent. Yeah. So you have to remove the radical to get to the exponent. All right, let's do the last one. Last one says 3p both to the 1/2 power. So I need to change that. Well, first of all, what form is that? Exponential or radical? Exponential. You have an exponent, right? So this is exponential. We need to change it to a radical. So take your base, 3p, rewrite the base. You know you're going to need a radical. Is that 3 to the 1/2 and p to the 1/2? Is that the same thing? Yeah. So this is your final answer. Anything to the 1/2 power is just going to go underneath the radical. Okay? Are there any questions on A, B, C, or D? Okay. So that's if you have a square root, but sometimes we have different roots, okay? I don't like how they did this. It says sometimes the exponent can be simplified before it's evaluated. I don't really like any of these. Let's just go to the check, okay? So down, is this, what page is this for you guys? It's 14 for me. Is it 13? Or the middle, or where? 13? Okay, so this is page 13. So this is 49 to the 3/2 power. Now 3/2 is the same as 1/2, which we know how to take that. That's like the square root, right? And times 3. Okay? So what is, if I do this first, what is the square root of 49? No? What's the square root of 49? What number times itself gives you 49? 7. Okay? So you got 7 from the 49 to the 1/2 power. Now we have to take that to the 3rd power, and 7 to the 3rd power, if you do it on your calculators, 7 caret 3, is it 343? But what you want to do you see that? We want to break it up into 1/2 times something, because we know anything to the 1/2 power is like a square root. Okay? Ashley, come on. Head up, please. Amani, come on. Hey. All right. So let's take a look at letter B. We have 36 over 49 to the 3/2 power. We are going to break that down into 36 over 49. I know 3/2 is to the 1/2 power, right? And then I could also take that times 3. So I'm breaking it up. So this is the square root of 36 over the square root of 49, because we know anything to the 1/2 power is a square root. And then I'm going to take this to the 3rd power. What is the square root of 36? 6. What's the square root of 49? 7. And now if I take these to the 3rd power, what's so funny?
You say 7.
That's funny? Oh. A little bit? 6 to the 3rd, 7 to the 3rd. What'd you say? Wait. What is 6 to the 3rd power? Is it 1024? Somebody check my math. 6 to the 3rd power, 6 caret 3. Everybody should have a calculator on your desk for the rest of this chapter. Is it 1024? Yes? How about 7 to the 3rd? What's 6 to the 3rd power? Is it 1024? 216. Oh, I thought you said yes it was. Sorry. 216. And what's 7 to the 3rd? 343. I don't have a calculator, and I'm really not thinking right now about that part. Oh, so if you have something to the 1/2 power or the 3/2 power, break it up into 1/2 times something else. Okay? All right. Ooh. So tomorrow, you should be working on homework number 2. Now, I do not have very many homework number 1s completed yet. I have some. But homework number 2 should be due tomorrow. So come tomorrow with some questions on homework 2. Also, you have a skills check. A skills check. It's only going to be worth 15 points. And that is on section 10.1 through 10.4. Multiplication of exponents. They have to have the same base. You add the exponents. Division of exponents. They have to have the same base. And you subtract. Anno. Anything to the 0 power is equal to what? 1. You need to remember that. And negative exponents, if they are in one part of the fraction, you have to move it and take away the negative number. Okay? Also, you can work, there is the weekly Canvas activity, the WCA. If you did not do the one for last week, that's 922, and the one for this week is 929. So there is lots for you to do concerning math, okay? If you have questions, I'll be right over there at the desk. You guys, as having me for 5th period, you should be able to ask questions. You should be able to do retakes because you have this extra study hall time built in, okay? So take advantage of it. All right. And Sierra